Paul McGregor, how are you, mate?
Very good, thank you, Brad.
Good to have you here. Hey, I've got to ask the first thing. Everyone calls you Mary. Where does that come from?
Well, it started when I was very young. I had a coach called John Green,
Yep.
and his son was the best mate of mine at the time, and I used to spend a fair bit of time at his house growing up. And he thought it was quite funny that to call me Mary McGregor, and the reason why is I was a bit of a whinger. I had a lot of complaints in me when I was a kid, and didn't like losing very good. So he went about. There was a singer at the time called Mary McGregor, and a bit of a one-hit wonder, but he thought it was nice and funny at the time to call me that, and it's stuck ever since. It's never left. So
I love it.
Yeah, I live with it. I don't know if I love it, but it's as you grow up, you just brush it off. But they tried to change my name a couple of times through the media and stuff, and Richo down here, when he was running the media, tried to call me Buster. But that didn't last. Me mates weren't going to let that go. Me footy mates, a lot of them call me Eagle, as another nickname, the Bald Eagle.
Yeah.
So so that's a few things have changed, but Mary's been there for a very, very long time.
There you go. I like it. How you doing?
I'm good. Life's pretty good. I've got sort of health is my wealth at the moment. I'm getting up and got a good routine going in the mornings. First time in 34 years I haven't had to do anything with a routine in life in the job sense. So it's been change. It's had its challenges at times because you can get bored through the day, but I'm in a pretty good routine. I get up early. I can set my alarm at 4:20, Monday to Friday, no weekend stuff, but Monday to Friday, probably stretch for about 20 minutes. Got a group of guys that come in and we train for an hour, go to brekkie for an hour, then I'll go for a walk for 10k, and then have a sauna, have a swim. Day starts well. About 11 o'clock, I find things to do after that.
That's
so
great.
It's pretty good.
I like it. Front loaded all, right?
Yeah, well, get it done in the morning, and so whatever happens in the afternoon or mid-morning, you go with it. And the thing is, I look at the time I spent when I was working, and I was a bit of a workaholic. I'd get there first and leave last pretty well, and leave no stone unturned. And I just don't like now with the routine I've got and the system. I don't know, how I'd managed to do that. You know what I mean? I don't find time to do too much more than I'm doing really. So, but it's good that I can fill my day in with not too much worry. A lot of people can't.
I feel like that's one of the things you consistently hear about people who have come from really structured environments, be it you're a professional athlete, which you did, and then you stepped into coaching. You hear it with guys who leave the military, is, when you're in that structure, you feel at home.
Yeah.
When you're out of it, it really takes time to adapt. Did it take you long to find your feet?
No, I thought it, like everyone I spoke to said, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm not sure, But I always had something, even the last couple of years I've been involved in Origin pathways and the state stuff. The year before that I'd done some work with Para in 22 through the GF. I built a brand new home only, over a 14-month period. There's about 6 months of planning before that. So I've kept myself busy and haven't just cut the cord and dropped everything. This is the first year I've done that. And everyone said, what are you doing? What are you up to? Because they just didn't think I could do nothing really because of what, my past. But I'm actually enjoying it. I don't know if it's me forever, but the me for now, I've got a core group of guys that it helps when you've got someone to rely on you because they train at my house. I've got a semi sort of commercial gym there. It's pretty good for what we need. And they turn up every day at 5 o'clock, so they need to get in. So I need to be up, and that's got me. That routine is really good. Then you go for coffees and you have a chat about life and general well-being and things that's happening every day in their life and in my life and in footy and everything that goes around. So you leave that and then you get your own time and do your walk and your sauna and stuff. So it's pretty good.
Do you think that's? To me, that almost isn't super common in guys of your generation to have that group of core mates they see every day.
Definitely not.
Is that a footy thing?
I think so. I think we got to find the right mates too. You know, the people that you hang around are the people you turn into, right? So you got to find people that you generally enjoy being around. And the guys that train, we've known each other for a very long time, and it's been through rugby league or business or school. One of the guys go back to my school days. So, but we've got a really good relationship between us all, and you know, we sort of push each other a little bit in the ways of if you don't turn up, you cop a little bit.
That's healthy.
Yeah, it's healthy. Healthy conflict's good,
Yeah.
and it's a bit of cheat going on. We've got a little punters group involved in that with a few other guys that we have a small little bet on the weekend, and we take each other apart when that doesn't go too good. So there's a lot of banter involved, I suppose, in that group, which is great. You know, like so. You know, and as soon as you can see someone sort of fall on a little bit, you're there to lend a hand and pick him up and make sure he's walking with his 2 feet and not crawling on his knees. So.
100%.
Yeah.
Mate, tell me, like a lot of guys in the footy world pick up golf. Did you ever get interested?
No, never. And it's something that if I'm not good at, I don't go after it. And when I first had a swing of golf, I didn't really take to it too well. And then I realised the time needed to be spent to be good at it. And I never had that time. Through my career, I had 18 surgeries and pretty well 12 of them were serious sort of stuff that took a period of time that you had to recover from. So, my downtime was more spent recovering, ready to go again. So I didn't really get any routine into playing golf like a lot of the boys did. And there's quite some good golfers amongst them as well. Now I have got the time. That might be the next step in my life, that I actually do go and get some lessons and get some practice in and play a bit of golf. But I have got the time, if I don't do anything different in the next couple of years, to get better at it.
For sure. You know, you mentioned the surgeries. 18 surgeries is a lot. A common complaint, I think, of any guy in his 50s is how sore he is when he wakes up in the morning. It doesn't necessarily need to be the case, though, does it? It sounds like you're either combating what was, I don't know how you wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear how you feel. But it sounds like you're trying to combat that with the wellness routine.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel actually worse when I go away on holidays, where I don't get into a routine, and obviously I like a beer and I like good food, and so when you're away you do a lot of things different than you would at home, day to day, week to week. But so that sort of affects me a little bit more. In a routine now, what I'm doing is great. I still wake up sore. I had back surgery last March, which is my latest one. Before that was my neck, which was probably 8 years before that. And they're just ongoing sort of leftovers from my playing days. And mate, I was in a position that I shouldn't have got banged up too much either, and I really got away with a fair bit. But it's just like compression of disc and disc bulges and things like that. But my back's been the one that's really I've had to keep on top of. That's probably been the worst. And as we get older, we don't recover as quick. So making sure that I'm in a good routine of movements before I actually lift and train, and then a bit of stretching afterwards is really important to the well-being of the makeup of my body at the moment after all that. But my knees are good. I can still run, which is good. A lot of guys that can't run that have played in Sydney. I actually enjoy it. I never really enjoyed training when I was playing, to be totally truthful. Yeah, I sort of got through on a little bit of class and skill. I knew the game well. I enjoyed being coached by coaches, and I listened. But when it came to training, it was sort of something that I didn't really register with me until I got late in my career, because things come sort of natural to me when I got on the footy field. But as I got older, I realised that there's a lot more work involved in it. When you start to lose a bit of speed and you weren't as agile as you were through the wear and tear and time, you learn that you've got to do things a little bit differently, and it sort of set me up for later in life.
It's interesting you just mentioned there, you liked being coached. And one of the things I was interested to ask you is, I guess in the reflections through your time as a coach, looking back on your career as a player, what things do you wish you'd known in those earlier days from a coach's perspective that you think would have really helped your game?
Yeah, I think a lot. But you wouldn't change anything either. Does that make sense? You got to learn. You got to tread your own path, so to speak. But the thing that really, when you look back at my career, is I could have worked a fair bit harder. And known that I would have got better results, but back then I didn't realise. And it was when we first started playing in the New South Wales, it was called New South Wales Premiership back then. We were semi-full time, so we were still working, and then we were fitting training around it, so it wasn't like it is today. Then in the mid-90s, with the Super League and ARL war, it got professional, and then obviously by the end of my career, it was full professional. And it's just, that was in 2000, so 2001 when I retired, so it's been 23 years, and it's just kept going in the right direction. And it would have been completely different. I wouldn't have got away with what I got away with back then either. But, to answer your question, I think, the biggest thing I think a footballer can be now is to be approachable, and coachable. So, you've got to definitely be connected to your playing group as a player. You can't be distant. You've got to communicate well. And I think, the lessons I've learned as a coach, what affects you affects the team. Back then, I didn't really think that much. If I got in trouble, it was on me, but it actually affected the whole group. And a distracted group, whatever you want to call it, is never they never reach their full potential.
No.
And that's what I learned as a coach as I got older. And that's what I should have been able to. And I was captain, and I was a leader of a club, and I should have pulled a few people up a little bit more than I did. So that's probably the biggest learn.
It's interesting to lead is a real challenge, and we can look at great examples of leaders in society. We can also see plenty of bad examples of leaders with the access that we have these days. There's a quote that I love: "To lead the orchestra, you have to turn your back to the crowd." That seems more challenging than ever. I think as a captain of a club, as the coach of a club, as the head of a board, you have more criticism than you ever had. The access that people have these days through social media, through new age media, it's challenging. When you're in that position, you're the head coach at St George for a couple of years. How hard is it to play to the plan that you've put in place when there is the noise on the outside world telling you that you're getting it wrong or things need to change?
Yeah, you got to stick to your processes, and you got to make sure you've got a good vision. Your values and standards inside your organisation are strong. Your behaviours around your group, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, you got to stay solid to that. I just feel that, the media's got a job to do. And social media is a really big, it's a cesspool, to be honest with you, but it's there. So you can't turn away from it. You got to understand it's there. You got to deal with it. And the best way to deal with it is be honest and be truthful to the people that you can control and what you know is right. And that doesn't always sit well. If you walk past a situation where you don't agree with it, but you accept it, we're endorsing it. And I don't think that's very good. And I've seen that happen too many times with leaders and other people in organisations. You do rely on, at the higher pointy end you get in your career, you do rely on other people. So you've got to make sure them people are solid and good people around you that are not driven by self, but are driven by team. And that can be hard because there's, in our game, and everyone's climbing over each other to be a head coach or to be higher in the pecking order than they are. So that can be difficult. But you've just got to stay to your word and know, the reputation is what people think of you, but your character is who you are. And that's me. That's what I want to be known for. Like, my character can never be broken down when it comes to that. Did I get results? I did at times. Did the last probably 18 months hurt myself, my team, the fans, because we didn't get the results we were after? Yeah, but we were only got beaten by 3 field goals into a GF. We got a lot of injuries. We had some distractions off the field with Jack DeBellin and Gareth going back to England, and that really disabled our side. And could we have handled that time a little bit better, maybe? But you don't know. It's so back then it was to us it was policy on the run. No one really knew what the outcome was, and I wanted to stick solid to what I thought was right. Was a person is innocent until proven guilty. But that did hurt our footy team. There's no doubting that, because he was a big part of what we were about as a team. Our captain decided to leave us at the end of 19 and go to England, which he still had 3 years to run on his contract. They're little things that I think as a leader, when I look back, I could have critiqued a little bit better.
Yeah.
But that's the way footy goes.
This is life, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the uncontrollables. And they're sort of, when you get older, they're sort of little presents that you receive along the way, and you've got to turn the page. And although I really miss the club, and I'd still like to be involved, it's the page is turned, and the future is what it will be.
What made you decide to step into that opportunity in the first place? Because it's one thing to be a great player, and I think you speak with humility about your playing days, but you were a great player and you played for a long time and you were a part of successful sides. But to step into your coaching position, it's a whole nother game that comes with, I'd argue, a whole lot more stress and responsibility. So what was the motivation behind that decision?
Yeah, it was something that I didn't really set out to do. With playing, you sort of control what you can do on the game day. As a coach, you rely on your preparation through your week and the players to go out there and perform on game day. You really don't want to punch too much information into them on game day, because they've got to perform, and that's it. That's what they're there for. That's the enjoyment they get at the end of the week to play, and that's what they get paid for. So you've got to really rely on them getting that job done on game day. You can obviously tweak a few things at half time and game planning and stuff, but generally the game day is the boys. Go out there and do what you can do and do the best you can. And your effort can't be conditional how you feel. It's got to be on all the time. Your effort areas in the game. Why did I take the opportunity? I was away actually at the time. I'd been fortunate enough to coach Western Suburbs Local League, and we won 3 comps in a row. Then I went into coach reserve grade with the Cutters, which was a new club. They just formed, and we made the finals the first year. Second year, Stephen Price, who was the coach of the Dragons, asked me would I come and assist him with first grade in 2014. So I wanted that opportunity because I thought that I had more to offer than what I had been doing, even though it was a great grounding. Because when you're coaching, and a lot of like Rolls, done it just recently. He started at West as well before he went to Melbourne and the Roosters. But it's great grounding because you do the conditioning, you do you basically do recruiting, you do conditioning. You do coaching, both attack and defence. You get guys that have to work for a living, and then they play football for a little bit of money and fun. And it's getting all that together and then getting the result on the weekend. And when I took over West, they hadn't won anything in 18 years. So we had a really tight core group of people that wanted to get something done, and they got something done year after year. So I thought this coaching gig's pretty good. So I wanted to test myself, which led me to accept and really price his call. And then mid-year, I was with Laurie Daly in the Origin side as a staff member. And then I got a phone call that from the club to say that the head coach was going to be sacked. And I wasn't too impressed at the time because he was a mate of mine. So I rang and spoke to Steve and said, what do you think? He said, mate, you've got to take it on. I said, oh, look, I don't feel comfortable. I started with you. You put me in the position. And do you think that's right? And he goes, yeah, I do. I want you to finish the job we started for the year. And then, we went on to have a little bit of success that year. We won 7 of our last 13 games, where we were situated, obviously, when a coach gets, moved on through the year, your team's not running well.
Yeah.
But we ended up playing some decent footy at times, beaten some good teams. Then they interviewed a few people for the position. I sort of thought at the time, this is going well. Like, footy has been pretty kind to me leading up to that minute. I loved the club. I had passion for the club. I had a real purpose behind what I'd done. I knew the game well because I've been coached by a lot of good coaches and played the game at elite level. So I sort of thought, if not me, who? And then the players really asked me to take it on at the time. Spread it over with the family. The family are pretty good about it. If that's what you want to do, yeah, let's do it. So that's pretty well why I done it. I got the job and I had I think it was a 2 or 3 year contract. And they hadn't made the finals in 2015 since Wayne left, really. And we managed to lead the competition for a long way and play in the finals that year. And we got beaten by Canterbury by a field goal. So again, that year was nice. Like, the footy was going pretty good, and then you start to come against a little bit of you don't get what you want. The following year in 16, where we did make the finals. So that's when the noise starts, obviously, and that's when you really got to, you got to basically listen, but to the right people,
It's hard, isn't it? Because, I think about, say, a sport like F1. I don't watch a lot of F1 on race day, but I've watched the Netflix series.
Yeah, so have I.
It's good, right?
That's intense.
It's fucking interesting. And one of the things that strikes me is a real polarity from F1 to rugby league, outside of the money, is...
outside the money, right? Yeah.
Is, you hear these teams who are openly bottom field or midfield talk about these ambitious goals. And those ambitious goals aren't what you hear every rugby league coach say at the start of a season. These ambitious goals are, we'd like to be 5th on the grid this year. We'd like to be 6th. And part of me is like, that's weird, because part of the Australian sporting world is, if your ambition isn't to win the comp every year, something's wrong.
Yeah.
You're not the right person for the job. But there is definitely something to be said for succeeding more so and taking a step forward from where you were last year.
Yeah.
But the media and the noise seems to have a problem with that in Australia, where if you're not winning comps and you're not far ahead of where you were last year, well, then you're not the right person for the job.
It's very true.
And I can understand it in some elements, because I think we spoke about it before we hit record on the camera. The rugby league this year is, everyone's in it with a chance. Like, some weeks teams have beaten other teams that, they've been flogged by the week before, and there's a real contrast between what a good week can look like and a challenging week for teams. So I can understand why everyone's in it with a chance, but it is a very brutal sport to be a part of at that elite level when you're a coach. Yeah,
definitely. And it's a good point, because there is times where when you're travelling real well and everyone's really riding that, and including the media really giving you some big ticks, and what we're doing here is great, and fans are behind it, the club's behind it, your sponsors are going well, and then things can go wrong pretty quick. You can drop a game or two by a point, try disallowed or try allowed, your key players getting injured or suspended, and you haven't really got that depth, or you haven't built that character in that group over a long enough period. So the early success can really hurt you within a short period of time after that, because people expect that, right? Because you've already done that. So the next expectation is to do it again. And if you're not doing it again, why? But they don't want excuses or reasons, you know what I mean? They just want results. So that's the hard thing. And that's what I sort of wrestled with a fair bit, because we were always dubbed the July or August premiers, because we were always in the top 4 for a majority of the year, but we always faded out late in the year, and people crucified us around because of Origin period, and we had players involved in that and didn't recover, and I didn't rest them, and or we just really just struggled at the back end of the year through lack of depth or injuries or consistency, really, in the end of the day. And other teams were pushing through that, and we weren't managing that. And as a head coach, you've got to expect that the heat's coming down on you, no one else, and that's part of it, that's a privilege of the position you hold. But some things that at times are out of your control, but you've got to stay true to who you are, and that goes back to your character and the people you're trying to build and bring into your organisation to hold you up for longer periods.
During that time at St George, like, if you look back on that period with hindsight, what do you think the quality of your life was like?
Better off asking my kids that. They found me again, they think. So, look, I think when you're invested in a position that holds so much weight, I think you've got to really give it everything you have. You know what I mean? But obviously you've got to get away from that as well, and you've got to make sure the quality time you do spend with your family, you're actually totally with them at that minute. And that's hard because you might get a phone call, you might get an email that you might be just on your phone, you might be at dinner and someone comes in and wants to have a chat with you. So it's very difficult to really just get your own time. So I always made sure we had good holidays together at the end of the year, and I made sure that when we had the buys through the year that I spent time with them. And anywhere we had dinner, I'd make sure I'd put the phone to the side. But you know, them telling me that, like my young bloke, I really never watched too much of his footy when he was a kid because I was always somewhere else. That was hard.
Yeah.
And he tells me that as he gets older, so you sort of look back and you go, oh, yeah, well, I should have done that better. But because I was training on a Saturday, we were playing on a Friday, and I was doing video on a Saturday, or we were in another state, sometimes, again, that's a little bit that you can't control. He understood, but it probably wasn't the best thing for his career, even though he'll tell you he's too small to have made it, but he probably would have liked a little bit more influence from his old man. Even when I went to training, I'd feel that it wasn't in my best interest to be involved in correcting a coach or players because I wasn't the coach and I wasn't there enough.
That's hard. That's hard to do as well when you're in that position where you got the knowledge to impart.
Yeah, well, the coaches are really good. Yeah, Dave Baker, he was a good friend. So we'd chat. Don't worry about that. But I wouldn't jump in and get involved too much. The kids are only there for the enjoyment of it. And that's how it should be played at a junior level. And I actually seen too much at the minute of watching junior footy trying to be like the NRL. It's not what it's about. It's about giving kids an opportunity to have a really good afternoon with each other, getting really a good little community with one another, and
sure.
A little bit of culture around team effort and stuff. That's what I'd like to see junior footy back to, where playing with your mates. Winning's great. We all want to win. There's no doubt in that. But being around sportsmanship a little bit more than gamesmanship, because everyone just wants to win. And, that can you can bleed out doing that sometimes.
For sure. One of the things I'm going a little bit off track here, but one of the things that I've been thinking about recently is the affordability crisis we have in Australia now. I think in the next 2 decades, we're going to see parents who are working more and can't get their kids to sport on weekends or can't get their kids to footy clubs. And I think where we're going to struggle as a country, that America has something figured out that we don't, is those compulsory school systems and sports in schools, where kids who don't have an opportunity to get there because of their parents' jobs and careers have a pathway through their school to play the sport they love. And I hope that our next generations of kids don't suffer because of that.
Yeah, well, you think about when I grew up, we were playing football before school, after school, till the lights went out in the street, playing cricket through summer, same thing on the road out the front of the house. Now you never see that. You just don't see it. That's how we grew up. We grew up with having to come inside because there was no light to play anymore. Yeah. And it was time to do it. Now you just don't get to see that. I don't go anywhere and I can see that still happening. It's
a different world, isn't it?
It is, and it has to. There's got to be a balance there, right? But how that balance becomes apart, and that's why a lot of the teams, even as they're getting 18 years and plus, they don't play anymore because they've got to work, because they've got to support their own what's next in life, whether that may be supporting mum and dad through a bit of difficulty times. They've got a girlfriend, they want to go out, they want to do things, they want to get a house themselves, a unit, whatever it may be, and they can't afford to get injured, and they can't afford the time away from work, and they can't afford to knock back overtime. So they really take that next step in, and sport sort of gets pushed aside a little bit. So you're right. Where do we go from there? I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I was fortunate enough. My mum and dad both worked every day pretty well, Monday to Friday. So I rode a bike, I rode a skateboard, or I got a lift. Yeah. So we found a way through that because mum and dad wouldn't get home till 6 o'clock at night. By then, training had finished. But it was a lot safer back then too. You could pretty well do anything you want, you know what I mean? But you don't know that these days either.
Yeah, for sure. I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but we've been on the topic of family, and I had a conversation with you probably 6 months ago down at the beach now in Taroji. We bumped into each other, and you're telling me about the decision not to take the North Queensland job. Talk to me about that particular time of your life and why you decided to step away from footy and be in the position you're in now.
Yeah, okay. So after I finished with the Dragons in 20, I had that 12-month, and I'd done a little bit of pathways work with the New South Wales side with Freddie, but it was around COVID, so there wasn't a lot you could do then. Yeah. So the work there was minimal, but I was still invested. I was talking to a few other players that still were playing that wanted a bit of advice here and there. And then I took the job with Para in 22, and built the house at the same time. So in 22, it was a really good timing from Brad. He sort of wanted a consultant to come in and just oversee his program, have a good chat with himself about how he approaches video, basically how training runs, do a bit of video on the opposition, and game day when it's in Sydney. So it worked out really well where I could still be involved in the sport I loved, and I'd travel only a few days a week, and it gave me time to build the house, which was the important thing to my family at the time, right? Sure. So I project managed the home, done the thing with Parramatta. We had a great year, went through the GF. At the end of the year, Brad asked me would I be interested in going full time. He knew the answer before he asked me was no. I didn't want to sit in a car for 3 hours a day. Didn't really want to move because we just built a new home. And Brad wanted someone full time, not part time. So the Parramatta gig basically finished after that. It's involved with the Origin, the senior guys, the year before with Brad, and in 2023. So I was still watching footy as a coach pretty well as soon as the season started every day, and I'd probably know more about opposition now than I did as a coach because I was watching all the players, the good and bad, and so I was getting across most games, and I was just doing video, whatever Brad needed, whatever Joey wanted, whatever anyone needed at the time, that I'd cut it up and present it, and we'd meet once or twice a fortnight, sorry. And then had that really good 6-8 week period through the year with the guys at Origin. At the end of last year, Brad wasn't sure where he was headed, and I think he needed a bit of change around his staff anyway, to be honest. And then I got a phone call from Todd Payton, and he said, would you be interested in coming up to North Queensland? I love North Queensland. I think I've got some good friends up there. I always love visiting North Queensland. So I said, oh yeah, look, give me a couple of days. I'll have a think about it, talk to the wife, family. I'll get back to you. So I got back to him and said, yeah, look, I'd be interested in going up there and having a look around. So I booked a few flights because I thought I was only formality going up there, having a look around, find out where I was living, let's get to work, so to speak, Had it worked out with the wife that she was going to sort of come up a couple of weeks at a time here and there, and then the kids would come up when they can. Anyway, when I went up there, I looked around at, I didn't have the accommodation right how I wanted it at the time. The football side, it was fine. Look, they're a great establishment up there, great practice centre. The town is just a football town. The playing arena's as good as you ever want to, coach and be involved in. The time wasn't right for the family, to be honest. So I just decided that when I come back home, I had a chat with my young bloke, my daughter, and my wife, and they pretty well said, "Is this what you really want to do?" And it's the first time in my thought process where, as a job, that I wanted to put my family first. And I thought, you know what, the best thing I can do is probably give Todd enough time to pick up someone else, because it was still a 5-week period before the boys were back at training, that he could find someone else to replace me. So I just rang Toddy and said, "Oh, look, the family just doesn't want to really happen at the minute." They were okay with it, but I could you can sense when it's probably not, and I wasn't convinced that I wanted to be, that far away from them as well for that amount of period as an assistant coach. So I decided that, it's not the right timing.
Not the right time.
And it was more around family and self, and that needed to be done at this stage of my career as well, I think.
Well, cast forward to 2024, there's positions open, let's just say that. Has there been any interest from your perspective to be a name in the ring?
Look, my manager Dave Riolo's, when I first finished with the Dragons, I didn't want my name, because usually what happens is you get your name to everything that opens up, and it's really driven by managers and media. And I said to Dave, look, unless there's an invested interest in myself, I'd rather be left out of all conversations. And that's been how it has been the whole time. Have I got an ambition to be head coach again? Yes, certainly. It's got to be at the right organisation. And that's got to be something for them as well as me. Around our vision, our values, what we want to stand for, what we want to be known for, how we're going to go about it. Roster list management, the whole thing has got to be really open-ended on both sides for me to be interested in taking another position, because I want to be successful. I want to win. But along the road, you're going to have some bumps, and you're going to have to get some, short-term success under a long-term plan. But you've got to stick to that plan if you think it's the right plan. And obviously, the organisation and yourself have got to agree with that. And there's not a lot of organisations that want to go out on that limb. They want success. But premierships to me are not roster driven for 12 months. They're over a 2 or 3 year period before you can actually get a result from it.
There's probably very clear examples of that, right? Like Penrith at the moment, the run they're on.
Yeah.
Is it, I speak very much from an outsider's perspective, who watches a little bit of footy here and there, but doesn't understand the game to the same level that you do. But I see there a change in the culture of the way that the club's run over years and years, that now everyone's like, God, are these guys beatable year to year?
They're so good to watch. And they're so good to coach. Like, I was fortunate enough to have a few, more than a few of the boys in the Origin in the last couple of years, and you can see why they're successful. They've got they expect to win. They've got a real good understanding of themselves. And that's the biggest thing about rugby league as players, and you've got to have good self-awareness about what you can do. They don't leave anything unturned in their prep, and that to me eliminates a lot of fear. If you can get your prep right, because there's always an underlying fear in every player. They might never say they've got any fear, but I think fear can be eliminated or really, dice down a fair bit if you get your prep right and you get confidence out of that and you get discipline around that.
It's an interesting conversation, that, because one of the questions I thought that would be valuable to ask you, not just from a rugby league perspective, but for anyone who is in a position where they want to improve at their craft in life, what makes a player really coachable?
They've got to be devoted to their craft. That's the thing. If they're devoted to their craft, that drives discipline. It's that simple. And, to do anything in life, you've got to be disciplined, you've got to be consistent, but you've got to definitely have vision and a purpose behind that, But for me, the best players I've coached that are consistently the best, they love the game and they love going after the game. You can only do that if you're dedicated to your craft, and that drives your discipline. Because if you're dedicated to something, you're disciplined around it, you'd be consistent at it. Usually go really good, and there's some great players that I've seen, and you still see now that have great games and they drop off. They know great games to drop off, or they have a couple of good years and you don't see them again. But the real good ones, they're ones that they play big games well, and they go after the ball in big games, or go after the opposition in big games, because they trust what they can do, because they've had that real underlining of self-awareness around what they've done through the week to be able to perform on the weekend.
For sure. Like, if you look back on your time coaching, can you identify some of those players that really knew how to be there in those big moments and were also a joy to coach?
Yeah, look, I don't want to really single out names, because that's not fair on someone that I've left out. Yeah. But I just feel that the guys that know what their ability is, and they know their shortfalls. I always think courage is about recognising your weakness and going about fixing it. You know what I mean? Like, so you've got to know what you're good at and hold on to it and use it as your best tool. But you also got to know what you're weak at and how you can, work around that weakness with players inside you and outside you, or your self-awareness around what the opposition is going to do, and where you can you can anticipate a bit quicker to make up for them shortfalls in your own self. So the best players I have got courage around that, and they go and train on their weaknesses. A lot of people don't want to display weaknesses because their character is, I don't really want to show anyone, even my teammates, what I'm not quite good enough at. So I won't go and train for it or practice it, because I look a bit, you don't look comfortable, like, look at him, you can't even catch a pass, you know what I mean? But, instead of just going and doing that repetition and getting better at something through a bit of correction, a bit of motivation from the people that are coaching you, and that teaching, the better ones I've found that were consistent would go and do that all the time. But the ones that were skillful at other things but didn't want to practice that, they weren't there for the long term. They were there, they were playing, they were good players, but they really never reached their full potential because they didn't want to really practice what they weren't as good at.
Yeah, it's and there's clear examples of that. If you look at the last decade, or at least the last 15 years that I've been watching footy, you see the older guys who really are the greats.
Yeah.
The guys that we look back and talk about those big moments. And I guess for everyone, it's the guys like Joey, Freddie, guys like Thurston, Cam Smith.
Yep.
All these players that we look back on and week after week, so consistent. You hear their disciplines and their practices.
Yeah.
Like, I hear a lot of this about Cooper Cronk being a Chook supporter.
Yeah.
Those 2 years he was there, and how he has an impact on the team by the daily professionalism, like the little 1%ers. And there's no surprise why they've been able to continue developing their game into their later years.
Yeah.
When technically speaking, their athleticism should be slowing down.
Yeah.
They continue to get better. There's like a knowing and a confidence they have in the exact moment they need it, because it's second nature.
Well, you talk about Cooper. Like, Cooper won a grand final with one shoulder. He got through the game. They changed the game plan around what they needed to do, and obviously Kiri stood up. But he knew what he couldn't do, but he knew also what he could bring the team. And he just went about practicing that and getting it right just for that one game, and they achieved that goal. The good players, they know what they want and they go after what they want. But we see the end result of that. We don't see what happens in between that. And in between that is a lot of hard work. And we see the end result. And as a coach, you want to coach more of them guys that want to do that in-between stuff than just go out and play well on the weekend. Obviously, we end up, scoreboard is a balance sheet. So we've got to win games of footy, right? But I get a real good, I get a good like, and I love seeing guys that are there before training, practicing, they're after training, practicing, when they don't need to be, but they are. And that shows to me what they want to achieve themselves and what they want to achieve for the team. And the more time you get of that, the better off your team's going to be. And I don't mean practice to practice. I mean practice to deliver. There's a difference. People go out there and practice to practice to practice, but they're really only doing it because they've either been told to do it or they see other people doing it and I think, oh, I've got to do it as well. No, it's going out there to practice to deliver something that you can on the weekend. And that's the difference. And the good ones know what they need to practice on to deliver. And then they get into the game and they go after that. And that's what you want 17 guys to do every weekend. But it doesn't always happen because everyone's got a different way of going about things. Like, because when they come through, they didn't have to do that work. Do you know, like they were always the best at their age, or they were always best in their team, or they were always the best in their group. But when they get to this level, there's a lot of other players with that same person. So if that other player wants to work harder than you and get better at different things around that practice, maybe you might fall behind.
Yeah, for sure. You know, back in your playing career and even in your career as a coach, did you ever seek any mentors outside of rugby league?
I did. I won't mention them, but yeah, of course. I always had someone to call. My father was a real astute. He played the game. He coached the game in the bush. So
Whereabouts?
Well, he coached him. He was from Muswellbrook, so he coached up Muswellbrook, and then he went to Bamboka and coached down at Bega and Bamboka way. And then he played. He only played the short stint of 1 or 2 games in Wollongong, and then he had to work. So he had to choose between back then work and footy. So he obviously had to work, but he played a lot of years in the bush. Yeah, probably a dozen years in the bush. He's good. He was a centre. He's quite handy. Defensively, he was very good. He's much better than I was, apparently, by all the uncles. So he knew the game well. He watched the game. So the feedback was honest with him, which is good. And he let me know when he thought I was going okay. And he let me know when I needed to do better. But it was fair. And certainly other people ex-coaches that I had when I started coaching, I lent on them a little bit. People that I trust, I lent on them a little bit. You don't want to get too many opinions because sometimes opinions change your decisions, and opinions are far different than decision making. Because everyone's got an opinion, but the decision ends up being on you as a coach. And if you make the wrong one, it's not their opinion that counts. It's your decision that you made. So I sort of, I like to, have that list small. But I did have one, and I had some ex-coaches that were in their 50s and 60s, or in their 60s and 70s actually, that coached before.
This might sound like a silly question, but I can imagine there's a complexity to it. Your role as a head coach is it really player management first, understanding players, giving them the tools that they need? Like, how much of it is player management and how much of it is tactics?
Well, I think it's all of that. It's got to be. You certainly learn about the player and about his family and about the importance of his culture. You need to know that. There's no doubt in that to be successful, because you got to ride the good and bad. And every young myself, totally included, when I was growing up, you always have your good and bad. Your relationship have your ups and downs. Your family, or you always have the blues within the family. So every day can be a different day for a number of people that turn up to training. So you've got to know what's inside that. And to know that, you've got to know the person, you've got to know the family. So, you work hard on doing that. Even though sometimes you don't show too much, you actually do know. And when it's needed to be shown, you do care. So I think that's important. In saying that, I think, you've got your staff to worry about too, and to make sure that they're okay, because a lot of the staff aren't from the same area, so they'll bring family down from Brisbane, Melbourne, overseas sometimes into your organisation. So you've got to make sure they're settled, because they're the people that have got to make sure the environment that we're creating is the right environment for the players to turn up to. So how we do that is getting that right first, and then getting the right players involved in the club outside your current list that you basically take on. So when you get there, you take on a list, and then you create the list over time that you want, the people that you want to bring in, and you usually check their past. But when they get there, things can change. Like a good player for me was Josh Dukes, and I think, I said I wouldn't single anyone out, but Dukes is a good story. Dukes come to me from Canberra, Pricey from Canberra, and Steve only lasted a half year. Now, I had a great relationship with Josh. He started here. He hadn't played any rep footy. He played for his state, played for his country. He was one of our best players. And I liked the character. I liked, and a lot of people out there, it didn't, right? So he could rub people up the wrong way. But I liked the guy, and I thought there's something in this guy. You know, there's a fair bit of personality that people aren't seeing enough of, and I like how he played. And you don't get them honours state Australia regularly over year after year if you're not doing good things, right? Unfortunately, we didn't keep him at the end of 17 because he got an offer of too much, obviously, to go to Cronulla. But we didn't see the best of Josh after that. And I thought that was someone that I really could get to do well and challenge. And he respected that challenge, and he went out and played that way. So, and I broke that down with his family, his upbringing, and all the rest of it. And I just thought, you know, that's what you really enjoy when you coach, like knowing where they come from, knowing where they got to, and knowing, you know, how much they've got out of that. And complete opposite of that person is Cam McGuinness, where, you know, he don't need anything except a bit of grass and his boots on, because he just wants to go after it. You know, well-educated, ducks at school.
Tough bastard, isn't he?
Oh, well, just a family upbringing. Father was a school teacher. Mother, beautiful person. Great character. Don't need to work on that guy. Just go over there and do your stuff, right? But, you know that he's always going to be there for what you need him for, and be a person of real integrity, you know. So contrasting characters, but still two guys that you really like to be involved in. For
sure. Were there any peculiar hires in your time as a coach where you looked at the staff and thought, we've got to try something different here? Because I was pushing at John Kerwin for a little while, All Blacks legend, to get me over to Venice as his head of morale. I thought, little life in Venice, get me on there, head of morale, keeping everyone's spirits up in the team. And I haven't received an offer letter yet from John, but I often wonder, you know, what are the peculiar little setups in the coaching staff at rugby league clubs that maybe we don't know about as everyday watchers of the game?
You probably don't. We probably don't look at it that much that way. You're probably just looking for the most credentialed person to fill up that position that you have available. So there's no sprinkling the old gold dust around and making it work. It's, you know, I feel that, and again, this is what I've learned over time. In my coaching, I had a very young staff. Like I had Dean Young, Ben Hornby, who are now good coaches, coaching. They've had experience at a couple of clubs. They had never had any experience coaching except to the SG Ball, which was the under-20s kids. But they were my assistant coaches. I put Ian Milne into recruitment. Well, the club and I won't say I, but the club and I put Ian into recruitment and retention. He'd never done that before. And we pulled a bloke called Ben Harron in from recruitment and retention into football manager. So the roles that the boys had, they were great people, hardworking, and knew the sport, but they never had real good experience in them positions. So we had to sort of find our way together on that journey. That's probably something, if I look back, and I should have mixed that up better with different people, with more experience around that, because I was still, even though I'd been around the game for a long time as a player, I'd never actually coached at that level. I've just coached reserve grade and been an assistant, but never coached the first grade side. So, but that early success probably hides a little bit of that, like we were talking about before. So I probably could have done better with my like you're saying, the characters around the organisation or the people that you bring in. But we brought a guy in, probably the guy from left field, as I call it, brought an Army guy in called Richie Gibson to do our culture at the end of 17. And it was completely different than what we'd done at camp, and like most people do a bit of an Army camp at the end of your block before Christmas. And we done something there with Richie. I think it was he might have come in 17 actually. But it was completely different to any other culture person we had in the organisation. And I thought he brought a lot of positivity. And I think that's, when I look back at your hiring of people, you've got to really bring positive people in the organisation and have a no complaining rule, because complaints are they make you feel better, but everyone else spew up pretty well. Makes it, because it's not good. So for me, them people, the magic person you just want positive people in your environment, which then can create other things around that. And I don't think if you get people, dragging themselves into the workforce and then they've got to teach people, it's not a real good place to be.
No, it's not, is it? It's, I heard Dana White speaking recently, president of the UFC, and he made a comment something along the lines of, every day I wake up, I'm excited to get out of bed because I have an enthusiasm for the day that's ahead of me. Nice. And so regardless of the challenges of the day and what we have to navigate, we're going to have a good time doing it. We're going to be positive about it.
Absolutely. And
I think that's the attitude. I recently just done a campaign with a mental health organisation down in Melbourne. And we've done this campaign where we created these hoodies, and they kind of do a lot of like merch with messaging, and done a video behind it and my story. It was an honour that they gave me an opportunity to be a part of it. And the whole message of the campaign was, you can be anything, so why not be positive? And I'm a big believer in that.
And that's so good. That's so good to hear, because I wasn't, and again, there are lessons you learn when you turn the page, but I wasn't really convinced on that. Like back then, I just wanted the best credentialed people in and around my staff, or I wanted the people that I thought would help. But I think you've got to get the right mix. You don't always have to be the smartest in the room to have a good, reaction of people. And, I feel if you get positive people, they'll find a way around what they don't know and their shortfalls. Negative people always find a reason not to do something. And, I just think that the more I look back, and the more, if I do it ever again, is I'd make sure that, you get the right balance in that type of guy. Everything can't be fluffy, but, even when, and I noticed this when I was coaching, when we were going well, I was a good teacher. When I was coaching bad, or when we were losing, I was telling people what to do. There's a difference. Yeah. There's a huge difference. And if you get too many people the same as you, well, that ain't going to work. You know what I mean? So you've got to make sure that, even through the tough times, you're still teaching. You're not telling, because people don't really want to listen to something that they're not going to get better from. So, if I look back at anything, I'd say right now is I could have taught better, or teach, whatever you want to say it, better than actually telling people what to do, because that's what you fall into, that real zone of self-preservation a little bit.
It's such a challenge to do, like you said, when you're in it, because when things aren't going well, there's almost how you act in chaos.
Yeah.
It really tests your character. Yeah,
it does. And, like, as much as you don't think at the time, because you're worried about too many things, when you reflect, that's when you get time to actually understand, And, they don't, it's an old saying, but they don't hire to retire. They hire to fire. That's how it is, you know what I mean? Like, so you never, there's not many people that stay. Like Craig Bellamy, for argument's sake, he's a special guy that's been at one organisation his whole career. That doesn't happen very often anyway. No. So you've got to understand at some stage it's going to come to an end. But holding your character along the way and making sure that friendship stays solid through all that is pretty important. And the only way you can do that is be a teacher, not a teller, and hold your integrity. you know, do the right thing by people, and they'll, you know, everywhere you go, you can say, you know, you can hold a good conversation.
How do you feel about the game in 2024? Like, you know, I hear a lot of guys who played in your era who say they were the good old days, and you know, and for many different reasons, right? You know, like you could probably be a little bit more relaxed around the game and relaxed around the way you enjoyed yourself off the field. But these days we have a faster, more dynamic game, it seems. I often question whether that's for the better or not. I feel like we see more injury than ever.
Yeah.
And I don't know the stats behind that, so that could be a comment with absolutely no grounds, but it seems to me like there's more injuries.
Yeah, there is. There definitely is more injuries at the moment than there has been in the past. We're always looking for something better, aren't we? Like that's the thing. And the game's good. The game doesn't need a lot of change, but we're always looking for change. You know, it's a brutal sport. It's a gladiator sport where you know that collisions will cause injuries, and we know that the training and the analysts around the game is scrutinised so much to the point of you know pretty well everything about your opposition. Your prep through the week is really built around your team and what you think that's going to come at you, and time in the gym, time at the physio table. So you're really at the pointy end, and every year it just gets better. But do the rules need changing? Because the momentum in the game these days, it changes really quickly. And that can be from, you know, this 6 to go rule that come in at any time a referee can, just 6 to go, it might be tackle 3-0, and then another one, tackle 4. So all of a sudden you're defending for long periods of time, and as soon as you open up to fatigue, to an injury, and league points, you know, you're on the back foot. And then at some stage you've got to understand it'll come your way, but whether it comes your way too late in the game and you can't really swing it. But that's what I feel the biggest thing that's changed the game is that 6 to go rule. And I'm not sure, I understand that they didn't want penalties blown to stop the game from being a fast game, but I think we've lost our way a touch a little bit in that because, you know, going back there was a period where penalties were blown and there were like penalties were taken and people were scoring tries or set pieces because they had time to break the opposition down that way. Now it's like you just run into fatigue and the good teams still get through it. Like Melbourne can win ugly all the time.
Yeah,
they don't look like they're convincing, but they win. And they can maintain, I suppose, a decent self under pressure. They're comfortable being uncomfortable is probably the word the sentence I'm looking for. But Penrith are the same. Penrith can really control possession for long periods of time on teams and break them down that way with the footy. Not so much defensively, even though they're a very good defensive team, but the way they control the footy and move the ball around and put it in the positions where teams have got to return the footy. They're two teams that do it very well for long periods of time, but other teams can't do it. And the thing is, like we've seen scorelines, like 1 week teams are getting beaten by 20 points and 15, 16 points or whatever it may be, but turn around and win them by 60 the week after, 50 the week after, and you're just going, you know, where's that come from? But it's a little bit of, you know, who's available, how much fatigue's in the game from the week before, how much momentum they get at certain times, you know, during the game. A couple of decisions that might go against one team and they don't feel up for it. And the game goes the other way pretty quick. So, yeah, the game's definitely changed a little bit.
What do you think about, you know, I hear people talk about the structure of the game. I know Gus is a big proponent of, you know, like a conference system, playing less round games, playing a conference system and bringing in another, I believe, 2 teams to make that happen. You know, it's very American style. Do you see any merit in that?
Well, yeah, there's merit in everything because Gus is a pretty intelligent guy, and he would have put a lot of thought into it. So without, you know, me really digging into that conversation you just had, I think I think the biggest thing is it's the game's got to be run. Well, it is run by money, and the money comes from your product that's displayed every weekend on every day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, to the public and Fox and pay-per-view. So if it doesn't affect, if there's an improvement in our game where we can get less fatigue, there's a process where people will be really interested in relegation and promotion that doesn't affect that and the product that you're going to deliver to the audience, you've got to look at it. But if it does affect what you're going to produce in how the games are, score lines and the amount of footy that is on TV, you've got to be saying, well, that comes with a price, right?
Mm.
So there's a balance there, and there's a lot. I don't even think about them things like as a person or as a coach, because I've got other things to worry about. But like there'd be like a lot of smart people can sit in a room and come up with some sort of idea, but it's got to be then sold to the people that pay for the game and the fans, which are the people most important that go to the games.
For sure.
That's the big thing. We've got to take yourself out of it, and the people that I suppose are making decisions, and it's got to be for the fans because they're the most important, and the product that we're selling, because we've got to get the money to keep promoting our game the way we are, because it's a great game.
It is a great game. It is a great game, and you see, maybe it's the bias of being a New South Wales supporter, but you watch that game of footy last night, and you just see the talent and the guys. I was trying to work it out whether there was any guys on that Blues team who were above the age of 30, maybe one or two.
Yeah.
But that's a young footy side.
Yeah. Yowie, Jake, Critter, Crichton, back rower. Yeah, I don't think there would be. There'd be a few pushing late 20s, 29.
I know Moses is 29.
Yeah.
But
there's not many.
We look at them as spectators and they look like grown men because of the physicality. Like I hang out with Block and Zach every week, and they let me know how much bigger than they are than me every week. And
especially Zach, he'll let you know.
Yeah, and you look at them and you think, that's a 24-year-old man. He's a big unit.
Block's got to be careful about talking about people about his shape.
Yeah. Block's he keeps me honest too. To be fair, the big fella's got an engine though.
Good engine. Good engine.
I took him for.
He's a good fella. They're both good kids.
They are.
They're both. I debut both of them kids, and they're good. They're hard-working kids. There's a good thing, even though we've had our challenges, they both really want it. They want. They're the guys that I was talking about before that. They practice their craft. Mm. They're disciplined around that. They're devoted, and they're consistent at it. And you're seeing the results, obviously, Zach at the moment with the way he's playing in the biggest arena you can. That's no fluke.
No.
That's a lot of hard work involved in that. Positional change onto the wing. Every young man, wants to play in a position that he grew up in and feels he's best at. But he's making a real fist of it, on the wing in that arena. And at Clubland since he's moved. Yeah, so versatility. One
of the things that, has opened my eyes up to the game, being mates with those boys, is I'll say a few things. So the first thing immediately is I never really knew anyone who played rugby league. Mates growing up who played the sport. I've got mates who played on the fringes. I'd interviewed a few people on the podcast over the course of the years. Guys like Blake Austin and Jordan Carhu and some different characters who had their time in the game. But Zach was the first guy that I actually got close to outside of just doing a podcast interview and started hanging out as mates. And to see the human side of an athlete and to be a mate when the media's loud and to be a mate when, things aren't going to plan, and then to be introduced to Block and to create a great friendship with those boys now where I see them weekly. I was with Block this morning and we catch up for our coffee and our stroll every week. It's changed my perspective. I have a lot more empathy for athletes now in the spotlight. But But the other thing is, the game is so much more technical than I ever knew.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and that's such a naive thing to say, right? Because the spectator never understands it. But I hear the boys talk X's and O's. And rarely do they talk X's and O's over a coffee, but it might be the odd comment. Oh, did you watch that game last night? Did you see the shape?
Yeah.
Did you see when he come under him? This, and I'm just like, far out. This is, you know, the algorithms are floating through the air as I'm trying to understand what's happening. I've got no idea.
Yeah, well, they're students of the game. There's some footballers that don't watch much of rugby league either. They watch other sports, but them two guys, yeah, they're students. They love the game. They watch the game. They probably watch every game they can. Yeah. And they like talking it. Yeah, so that's someone that's devoted to their craft, isn't it? Really, that wants to know what other teams are doing, so they get an insight to when they play and they know what's sort of coming, and or keep an eye on other players and what they're good and not good at. They're like. There is a lot to go in, but sometimes the games play. You can still play the game in a simple way with a bit of variation. I think simplicity with a touch of variation is the way to go, and sometimes you can overcoach. I've found that at times too, where you can look to change a few things too much instead of just keeping it simple. You know, the harder you go, the clearer you think for most people. That's
Sure.
the truth of it, you know. Like, so if you're going hard, you think clearer. If you're thinking too much, you're not going too hard. So you know, like I feel that you've got to have you can throw as much information into a player, but at the end of the day, he's only going to take what he can take out of it, you know. So
Sure.
the detail's there, but some players won't want too much. They want minimal, and other players will want more. So you've got to make sure you cover it comfortably for both guys. So them two guys, they like detail, you know.
What do you think's next?
For me,
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I'm comfortable. That's I've been fortunate enough that I've had really good support around me in financial situations through life. You know, I've lived on the water most of my life, so I'm not real concerned, to be honest. I'm comfortable. I'll need to find something. Yeah, there's no doubt in that. Whether it be travel. Whether it be coaching another NRL side, whether it be consultant for a side. I enjoyed that when I had that year at Parra in 22. Not sure, and I'm because it's still fresh. We're only sort of 6 months into a year that it's the first year I've had completely off for 34 years. So in sport, in rugby league, so. It's refreshing, but I don't know how long that I want to stay out in the cold.
Tell me, like, outside of rugby league being an obvious passion and your wellness, like, what are some of the things that people wouldn't know about you outside of the spotlight? Are there other passions or hobbies there?
I like the building game. Yeah, I'm got a real eye for good architectural stuff in housing. I really enjoyed building my last home. I've done some developments before, so I like that. But at the moment, they're all overpriced, I think.
Yeah,
so.
it's harder than ever, isn't it?
It's hard to get something that you can make money off, right? So
Sure.
you've got to, to do that sort of game, there's got to be a decent earn because you're putting a lot at risk. So, but I enjoy that. I enjoy, trade guys are cool people. I grew up with a lot of them boys, and they work hard, and I like trying them to work their way if I can.
Do you think you like the idea of creating something from the ground up? The idea of it is a project?
Yeah, I do. I certainly like painting the canvas my own way. Yeah, so I'd love to start. I love the opportunity to do with a new club that comes into the NRL. If there was an offer, with the Perth side for argument's sake, or Papua New Guinea, whatever it may be. I'm not sure where any of that is at the minute, but I'm 150 plus first grade coach and a couple hundred games as a player, so I've got that experience if they were looking for something like myself to be around a new franchise. But like I said, if I think things are meant for a reason, and I've got a lot of faith over fear, so things will happen the way they do and how they play out, I'll be fine with.
100% they will.
So it's all good.
Mate, it's been a pleasure. It's been so interesting to hear your philosophy around the game, and I've always enjoyed, and my, my reason for reaching out to you is you're a relatively unreachable man because you're not on social media, but
No chance.
we'd have the odd bump into each other down the beach, and obviously mutual people, and I remember having a conversation with you at Taroji that day. I'd just gotten out of the water and we're having a chat, and I thought, God, there's so much more to you outside of your job as a coach, and I thought there'd be a lot of value in this conversation. So I appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Absolutely loved it.
Cheers, mate.
Good on you.